I was teaching this morning, and I started off with, for those of you who are lawyers, easements by prescription. So I feel like I should call on someone and to recite the facts of Toll versus Smith, but we won't do that because we're instead going to talk a little bit about Texas art. I'm going to do the play-by-play, and Judy's going to do the color commentary, I think. We're happy that you all are here, and I'm going to talk for just a few minutes, not very long, 5, 6, 7 minutes, about our collection and about the focus and about a little bit about the history, and then we'll go out into the gallery and walk around. We won't have time to see everything, of course, but there are about, maybe 12, 15, 18 works that I really want to point out. One of the wonderful things about this show is that we've been able to, courtesy of Kathy and Bill and Linda, we've been able to combine, put together again for the first time in some cases, drawings and prints and in some cases the paintings for those drawings and prints. So it's really nice and it's fun. I'm seeing the paintings together with the prints for the first time, some of them, and it's fun to compare and see how they're different. If we had 10 or 15 minutes at each work, we could play that children's game. What's different? How are these things changed? I don't want to talk too long. I do want to say, I want to acknowledge, what do you want to say about when we started collecting? Bill said 35 years, and that was nice. That probably added a few years, but probably.
I know I'm old, but I'm not quite that old.
You said you're old, but you're not quite that old, huh? We've been doing it probably a quarter of a century, probably 25. We've been married 28 years now, and I think we started collecting together about immediately when we got married. But both of us had collected prints and drawings, works on paper, before we were married. Mainly because when you're younger and don't have as much money, some of you are out there, some of you are collectors, you start with the prints, the works on paper, the prints and drawings, and then sometimes it's perceived as graduating to the paintings. We never graduated, I guess. We're permanent undergraduates, and I know Scott and Deborah here, and you all have a lot of works on paper as well, and you collect works on paper, and you love works on paper too. We love them.
As do the Cummings.
As do Light and Vicki Cummins as well, and maybe some of the others of you all whom I don't know may collect prints and drawings, works on paper. At first, it was about affordability, and then it became just love, and we like works on paper. You can't fake a work on paper. If an artist makes a mistake in a drawing or particularly in a print or a watercolor, they have to throw it away and start over again, or they have to rework the plate. It's you don't see many mistakes. They've really got to be good draftsmen and draftswomen, and you're going to see some of that out here in the galleries. What we have focused on, as many of you know, what we focused on is Texas art, works produced by Texas artists mainly between about 1930 and about 1960. And you're going to see in the galleries, I think the earliest work from our collection is 1929, and I think the latest is 1963. So you're going to see roughly that era. What this show focused on, and we have a large collection, and this is only a portion of it, but what this has focused on are the Lone Star Printmakers and the Texas Printmakers Guild. And that's, for those of you who may not know, those were two groups of printmakers. The men were the Lone Star Printmakers, and they excluded women. They wouldn't let the women join their group, and so the women formed their own group, the Texas Printmakers Guild, and the women's group ran from basically about 1940 to about 1965. They worked together for about a quarter of a century, having exhibitions and circuits. The men didn't. World War II shut them down, and they had 4 circuits. But Sue Canterbury, and God bless you, Sue, your catalog your essay was so wonderful. I commend to you Sue's essay in the catalog, because Sue discovered a small but a very important fact that just wasn't known before. The men had, the Lone Star Printmakers, and this was a group of about maybe 25 of the men artists, with some well-known names you would know: Otis Dozier, Jerry Bywaters, Alexander Hogue, Everett Spruce, William Lester, exhibited with them, but they also had a number of others who exhibited with them, and they exhibited from 1938 through, we thought, 4 circuits through 1942, but there was this tantalizing thing in the archives, this checklist for a 5th circuit, and we didn't know if that really happened. And Sue was able to, in her research, to find that the 5th circuit did take place, and they just didn't have the money apparently, or there was a paper shortage during World War II, 1942-43, and so they didn't do a formal catalog like they had done before, a brochure like they had done before. It was just a typewritten checklist, but it actually circulated. The circuit actually went, you said, to Texas, Oklahoma, and Louisiana. Is that right? The 3 states, something like that. So that's really terrific. That's a wonderful contribution to the scholarship in this area. Thank you very, very much for doing that. One of the things that we can do by collecting works on paper. Do you want to get in on any of this?
You just go.
I'm on a roll, right?
Job.
Yeah. Don't get between a professor and the microphone, right? Or the lectern. You're going to be run over. One of the things that collecting works on paper has allowed us to do, because they're relatively more affordable, is it's allowed us to collect broadly and deeply. So I don't really have a very good list, but I suspect we probably have 100 or 150, maybe 200 artists represented in our collection of about 600 to 700 works. And you also can collect deeply, so that we have a number we have multiple works by some artists, and people like, I guess, Blanche McVeigh and Otis Dozier, we happen to have about probably 30 works or so by each of them in various media. Not just, some of them are not just prints or not just drawings, watercolors, painting in the case of Dozier. Dozier, a bolo tie, as a matter of fact. I don't know if you can see, but I'm wearing Otis Dozier's bolo tie, which I'm very proud and happy to have. It's a wild turkey, and you can look at it. It looks like an alien of some kind, but it's really a wild turkey, and it's signed and dated on the back 76. So I don't know, maybe he saw aliens in 76. But one of the things that we do, we collect broadly and deeply, but we have to have some focuses. So one of the focuses you're going to see on the walls. You're going to see the breadth of the collection on the walls, but you're not going to see the depth. But because the space is just limited, but you're going to see that we focused on the Lone Star printmakers and the women of the Texas Printmakers Guild. That's one of the focuses of our collection. Another focus that you won't see here so much are teachers and students. So sometimes we have people who are the teachers and the students of those people. So I'm thinking of, say, William Lester or Everett Spruce and Jim Woodson or Hal Normand,
or Kelly Faring,
and some of his students, and like George Grammer. Kelly Faring was a professor of George Grammer's. For some of you who know Kelly Faring, who taught at UT, and George Grammer, who was his student at Texas Wesleyan in Fort Worth back in the 40s. So that's that. The other thing that we like to do, and when we hang our pictures on our walls, and some of you have been to our house and you know it's floor to ceiling, and some of the stuff is on the floors, but we really do have a focus. Wallpaper, Judy calls it. It's wallpaper. But we really do have, when we hang, we really do have a focus. And one of the focuses, Judy likes to say that she likes our works to be in conversation with each other, that maybe the subject matter relates, or maybe it's a teacher and a student, or maybe it could be various things. And one of the things that Kathy did so well, you've hung this so beautifully. I need you to come to our home and rehang our home. Is what I need you to do, because you've just done it absolutely beautifully, and we really appreciate that. What else do we want to say? I'm going through my checklist here. I can't work without notes, so I've got to, because I'll forget one of the elements of an easement by prescription if I don't have my notes. So, anything else you want to say? You think I've done it? Well, we acknowledge Sue Canterbury. We've talked about our focus. I don't know. Questions? Yeah, that's the other thing. Before we go into the gallery, do you have just general questions that we can answer about our collection, or what we would know about early Texas art? And I mean, there are certainly people sitting in this audience who know as much, certainly more in some cases, than we do about it. Are we still collecting? I've said it's an expensive habit, as you know. Even works on paper, as you well know. And you all are both retired now, and we got one retired and 1 foot in retirement. And I said that we're just going to have to kind of watch our pennies but we haven't. We haven't stopped. So yes. So you know, I mean, you all understand. I said I wasn't going to buy any more, and one of our friends, some of you know Carter Bowden in Fort Worth, who's a dealer, and I said to Carter, you know, we really got to stop, Carter, and he just laughed, and as he sold us 3 or 4 things in the last few months. So that's that. Lee, do you have a question? Yes, sir.
I'm really interested in the you're talking about conversations among works, but I'm also interested in the intergenerational conversations. You've got a collection that goes over a period of time, and so you're also going to be able to trace the influences. You know, you've got regional influences within the connection. I'd love to hear of it.
Yes, sir. Well, and I guess maybe I don't know. Maybe I should repeat this because this is being recorded, and also you all might not be able to hear everything. But Lee Jamison, who is a fine artist in his own right, and a wonderful photographer, and courtesy the catalog, it's courtesy of Lee. Lee took photographs of all of our works that are on the wall, and he just did a beautiful job. And he asked about the intergenerational teachers and students, so we can see changes and transitions and influences, and indeed we can. You won't see that on this wall because, again, we don't have the depth, and I don't think there are many. Do we have any teachers and students on these walls? Because the focus of this was because of the Lone Star Printmakers and the Texas Printmakers Guild, and we wanted to try to get at least one work by each of these members. So, as I said, for example, we have 30 works by Blanchard Bay, but we only have one of her works, and we have about 11 or 12 by Florence McClung, but we only have one hanging, 30 by Dozier. But we don't have, I don't think that, for the most part in those groups, I don't think there were teachers and students in those groups for the most part. I'm sure there's some that I just don't know about. What?
What I would like to say in response to that is, as scholarship develops, there's a whole lot more to learn about the works that we have and live with, and that's what's exciting about art.
Well, the reason I asked this, and I'm kind of primed to be thinking about this, because in the collection there is a Don Brown.
Yes.
Yes.
And because you're the connection because it was the student and it was Willard Cooper. Willard Cooper.
But also my maternal aunt, and I've got a cousin who studied under him as well, and now I'm a professional artist.
So Don Brown to Willard Cooper to Lee Jamison. So there's 3 generations right there of artists, and that was at Centenary College, right, in Shreveport.
But you know, you've got those influences that go from that, and sometimes they're not direct, but sometimes that you've got these influences that you're also seeing across just the fact that they're working in the same region.
That's so true, and that's so true that there are those influences, and I think people like Everett Spruce probably influenced so many artists, even if they weren't directly his students. I think.
And Frank Ray.
Of course, Frank Ray in Dallas. So, yes, ma'am, and then I'll get to you, and then I'll get to you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Excited to see the work. Before I do, I'm curious what got you started on collecting. I'm sure you each got interested in a different way. I'm curious about like continuation of collecting moving forward, and so I'm always interested in what got you started.
Well, I will say, she asked us what got us started in collecting. What got us interested? I don't know. We've always liked art.
I think we've been interested so long that we don't have a memory of
and we're so old we can't remember. I grew up with it. I had my aunt. A couple of people know my aunt. My mother had a twin sister who had no children, and so my brother, my sister, and I got shipped off to Kansas City. She lived in Kansas City. We grew up. I'm from Fort Worth. And so in the summers, she was a docent at the Nelson Atkins Museum up there, and she and her then husband were also art collectors, and they collected mid-century moderns. So they collected names like Henry Moore, de Kooning, Willem de Kooning, Richard Diebenkorn. And so I got my first exposure to that. And they had paintings, but they also had works on paper, and I was fascinated by the works on paper. And I think that when I was able, and I started collecting in college, but I didn't have a lot of spare money then. So when I was able to collect, it had to be a lithograph. And I remember, I think the first lithograph I bought was by Alexander Calder, and I was and we still have it. It's still hanging. It's not our focus anymore, but we still have it. You started collecting after college, right?
After college.
Right after college.
I was fortunate enough to meet some friends in Dallas who were members of the Dallas Print and Drawing Society, and they encouraged me to become a member. And it was a very old organization founded in the 30s to promote the study and appreciation of works on paper, particularly prints. So I started learning and became excited about it all, and little by little I started to acquire a few pieces.
And we keep learning. You never stop learning. And I do want to say this: if you do you collect yourself now, or do you want to? What? I do. So what's your focus, if I can ask, in collecting?
Friends.
Friends? Oh, a friend. Are you an artist yourself?
I'm a painter, but we end up by default collecting the work of people we know.
Right.
I go during a show and then find an artist and collect their work and then become friends with them. So the theme is friends.
The theme is friends, but you know, I mean, it's so true, and I think particularly the women, I don't know if the men did it as much, but particularly, speak, in the, I gotta speak in the microphone. Particularly the women artists in the 30s and 40s and 50s, you would get into an estate and you would see that they collected all these other, all their peers, because they were all friends and they traded prints. So I'm sure that you all do some of that as well. So that's great. If you know the people, that's wonderful. We have a few artists, for the most part. People say, oh, I have an artist that you have to collect, and my first question is he or she dead? And if they said no, come back when they die. But it's not quite like that. But most of our artists are deceased, because most of our works are pre-1960. But we do have a limited number of works by people who are living, and we know some of the artists, and we're happy to have become friends with some of them, particularly in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but not exclusively. So anyway, thank you. And yes, ma'am, you had a question.
Could you talk a little bit about the women artists and how they came out? Did they have a gallery owner or just each other, like the men artists?
And Sue could probably tell more, a lot more than we know about it. But the women that you're going to see here, all of them exhibited with this group called the Texas Printmakers Guild. And for the men, the Lone Star Printmakers, what they did is, I think, and Sue, please correct me if I'm wrong, Sue Canterbury is the curator of American art at the Dallas Museum of Art. And I don't know did we fully, you said that, didn't you, Bill? Or Kathy, someone said that. But and so Sue, please jump in and correct me, but my impression is that back in the 30s and then 40s and 50s, when these people were exhibiting together, they would contribute a print or a couple of prints, and the prints would go on a circuit, and they would go on a tour, and they disseminated knowledge that way, they educated people that way, and they also sold their prints that way. Many of those people, particularly the women, but not exclusively the women, also were teachers. And so a number of the women taught at SMU in Dallas, because there was a big group. A lot of them taught at Texas Women's University or what was the predecessor of Texas Women's University. It's currently TW in Denton. And then a number of the men taught at various places, particularly University of Texas seems to be. That's where Spruce and Lester and Hogue taught at Tulsa. Who else? Kelly Fearing ended up teaching at Texas.
Many taught at museum schools.
Museum school too, like the Dallas Museum.
The
Dozier taught there.
difference in the men and the women was the men seemed to be able, by and large, to support themselves through their art, and the women had to teach. And
that's really true. But if you want to collect early Texas art, this work is still available. I would say, for those of you who are in this room who collect, the works on paper, the really good quality and good condition, important prints aren't as available now as they used to be. You don't see them as much. It's Scott and Deborah. Is that a fair statement? They're just becoming scarcer. What? And they cost a lot more. They cost a lot more. You know, we started collecting these. Oh, this was $500. Now it's $5,000. So I can only buy 2 of them, not 10 of them. I drove the price up. No. Scott and Deborah too. It's not just us. It's not just us.
It's competition.
It's competition. It's competition. I see Ron and Paula Tyler here, and I think Ron is the one who said, and Ron's the former director of the Amy Carter Museum, and Ron, I think you're the one. Were you the one who said there are no friends at an auction, or was that Bill Reeves? One of the 2 of you. No friends at an auction. So, but I'm attributing that to you, Ron. Sure, take credit for it. Why not? Why not?
Light had a question.
Light and Light Cummins, Dr. Light Cummins.
Are you drawn in your collecting to works that have particular subjects or geographies?
Thank you for asking. The question was whether we were drawn among one of our focuses is particular subjects or geography. Yes, I'd say yes, definitely. There are subjects that we particularly like. We like animals. We like churches, sacred places. We like the missions in San Antonio.
Cemeteries?
Cemeteries. We like cemeteries. We're morbid people. You know. That's right. Well, we know where we're all going to end up. So why not live with that? And it was difficult for our Jerry Bywaters because Bill being so tough and Lynn being so tough, we could only pick one. I really wanted to pick Mexican Graveyard, Terlingua Graveyard, but we did Election Day at Balmoral because it's cuter and funnier and isn't as morbid. So I guess that's that. But yes, we do have a number of kind of subject matter focuses as well. What?
And I can tell you what we don't collect by and large, and that's still life.
Yeah, we don't. We have a few still lifes, but we don't. That's not primarily what we collect. And I think you'll see a couple of still lifes. There are a few still lifes. Maybe I'll point them out as we walk through the gallery. And again, when we walk through the gallery in a moment, I want to stop me yakking. I'll start yakking in front of the pictures, which will be a lot better. I won't have time to focus on everything, but I'll try to put the still lifes. I'll just try to say, oh, that's a still life that we collected. But that's not our main focus. I just don't think you see still lifes in prints that they're not as common as landscapes. Of course, they're more difficult to do, right? A still life has to be. You who are artists, you probably know you have to be much more precise, and they're much less forgiving than a landscape. You know, you can. I think you can. Is that? Do you feel that's true or not? Lee, do you feel that's true? You're an artist too.
The nice thing about a still life is that it's still.
Yeah, it doesn't move. That's true.
And the light's not changing.
That's true. That's a good point.
It does hold still for you, and you can come back to it later. Now, you've got some pieces that are like still lifes, but they've got people in them.
That's true.
That's something very different.
Yeah, there are some that are like set pieces, and that's really true. And I think if you could have seen a Mexican Graveyard, Terlingua Graveyard, that looks very much like a still life. And there are people, because you're focused on these graves, but there are people in amongst the graves, kind of laying flowers or whatever they are, and that looks very much like a still life.
Very monumental. Mm-hmm. It's a monumentality of the presentation.
Yeah. So, and I know we're looking at time, so we need to get out into the gallery so we at least have a time to look at a few of the works, a few groupings of the works. So, can we, if we walk over, would you just like to follow me and we'll reconvene? I wanted to start here first because I wanted to say, Christopher Beer, I wanted to say thank you so much because they were kind enough to lend a couple of works that are in John Now's collection. The paintings are in his collection, the prints or the drawings are in our collection, and we're happy to be able to unite them on the wall together again for the first time, as I say. So this is William Lester, Dallas artist, then ultimately taught at the University of Texas, so really was an Austin artist. And he, this is Live Oak Pass, and this is somewhere out. Do we know exactly where it is? Probably somewhere in the Davis Mountains, I think, because you see these columnar palisade kind of formations out there in the Davis Mountains of West Texas. You don't really see them anywhere else in Texas, I think. So we believe that this was done out somewhere in West Texas, and you see the watercolor and you see the print here. And one of the nice things about it is I like to compare. When you have this kind of a comparison, you get to see the differences, and there really aren't very many differences here. So it makes me wonder which came first. This is clearly signed and dated 1939. The William Lester Live Oak Pass was exhibited, I think, the 1941-42 Lone Star Printmaker Circuit. So we say circa 1941, but it could have been earlier. He could have done it. He could have done this first. Usually they do a painting and then they do a print of it, but often it's reversed, and this isn't reversed. You know, often because they'll do the painting and they'll draw on the plate or they'll draw on the lithograph and it comes out reversed. So they might have done some kind of transfer, or it's conceivable the print was done first. I don't think so, but
It could be transferred.
Do you think it'd be a transfer?
A lot of these guys at that time in Dallas, hardly anyone. Maybe Hogue had a press, and Bowling didn't get his till 1941.
Okay.
And so they would do their drawings, and initially several of them were sending them to Philadelphia for a guy to print for them, but by transfer. And then they started using Colorado Springs. They were at the school there for a while. And then I know Jerry Byler's was also using a printing press locally for a while in Dallas after he'd done Philadelphia and Colorado Springs. And so they were usually sending drawings to these other people to print for them. And
So-
and then eventually they were even sometimes sending the blocks themselves back and forth between the printer and themselves.
So if they,
Just looking at these, I would suggest there's scalar differences, so they don't scale directly one to the other. So they're probably from different drawings.
Oh, that's a really interesting point, and only an artist would notice that. Because me, I just thought, oh, well, this is just a smaller scale of this, but you think it's not the same scale.
It's not exactly the same scale.
That's
There's different compositional elements in the top one
so.
as opposed to the bottom one.
So one thing that I noticed, and this is my first time. I will say this is my second time to see this. I remember once upon a time that a certain wonderful friend and early Texas art person who was a dealer in a prior life, no, I won't mention any names, had this, and I have to admit, and I saw it, and I'm cheap, and I probably wouldn't have paid the price that another person paid for, and I think that it was not John Now. I think it may have come, but I won't talk about all that. But I said, oh, we have the print. I would love to have that, and I saw it was a red dot on it. It had already been sold. So this is really my first time to even study it for 5 minutes. So Chris, if you know some of those, I see that some of these
Like fence posts.
the fence posts are different, yeah. And I think some of and some I don't know. I guess this is probably snow, and this is maybe cracks or crevices in the snow. Do you think? And I think some of those are different than this. Dan, the sky is different.
This move right here is much different because you see the trees, so the valley's a little less profound, a little less deep.
We've asked and asked, and we've tried to figure out where this might be in West Texas, if it is in the Davis Mountains, as that would make it, the geology would make it appear to be the Davis Mountains, but there's nothing. There's Wild Rose Pass, which is the well-known pass out there, but we don't, near Fort Davis, but we don't know where anything called Live Oak Pass is, and we asked Mary Bones, who's the director of the Museum of the Big Bend, and she doesn't know. No one seems to know.
But so often these prints are not like a photograph, that the artist image is loosely representational
taken
of the
liberties.
actual scene.
So it may not actually look like that. And please, if you have questions, I mean, I'll be able to answer them, but please ask and interject. And I really appreciate you all interjecting. Thank you, Sue and Christopher and Bill. Thank you for thank you for being you. Thank you for being a foil on this. Over here on this wall are the works by Corinne Spellman, who taught at Texas Women's University. And she died, late 1970, 78, 79, something like that. And one of the things we like to focus on when we can are if we can get the prints and the drawing together, we try to do that. We didn't have the drawing for this, but we had the print in two versions: an etching, it's called Home on Leaf, an etching, and the lithograph. And I was delighted when we found out that John Now has this wonderful, wonderful painting. It's just really an outstanding painting. And through the courtesy of Christopher Beer. John Now was nice enough to lend this so we could unite these together as well. And this is one, you could spend 15, 20 minutes here looking at the differences. These two hang in our bedroom. We actually have a fairly high ceiling in our bedroom. We have a kind of a top, we have bookshelves, and we have a top shelf, and on the top shelf are about 8 or 9 works just leaned up there by Corning Spellman, prints. And so these are right next to each other. So I look at them periodically, and they're you know, I'm short, and they're a little tall, so it's like, you know, 2 feet above my head or something like that. But I like to look at the differences, and there are a lot of differences. The lithograph, it matches much more closely. It's not exact, but it's much more closely matches the painting. The etching there's some differences, even though it's the same subject, the same 2 people, they're both on a sofa. It's probably a nice Sunday morning. This guy's home on leave from the war, but there are some differences. The couch is different, the pose is slightly different, the background is different, there's different wallpaper there, and if you have a chance afterwards, or if you're coming back tomorrow, you might, and I'm certainly going to do this because I don't get the chance to see this very often. This is the first time they've all been together. I'm going to spend a few minutes seeing how many differences I can find. But we like to see works in different media when we can. We also like to collect, if we can, as I said, the drawing for the print. And it's going to be hard. I think I'm going to come over here and talk for a second, then I'm going to get out of the way and let you all come look. This is a print by Spellman called Tired Model. And you can imagine our delight and surprise when we found and were able to purchase a sketchbook of hers, and in that sketchbook were some of the preliminary sketches for this etching. So it's really nice, and so you can see it. And Kathy's done a wonderful job because we obviously you can't open it and see. There's several different preliminary sketches, and Lee, you've photographed some of them, and it's really nice. So the first one you see here is the model who is basically nude, and there's kind of a chair in the background. She's kind of leaning on the chair. If you could see some of the others, then she's got her little, I don't know, swimsuit or lingerie or whatever she's wearing here, and she's reclining, and then she must be tired, and maybe she got tired at the end of the day and just sat like that, and Corrine Spellman said, wait right there, don't move. And so we have that drawing, and then we have 2 early proofs of this work, and then the final print. So it's really nice to see that.
Where'd you find the sketchbook?
We found the sketchbook. Can we say where we found that sketchbook?
Yeah. I forget.
Well, I know. I remember. The gentleman is deceased now. It was Paul Rogers Harris, and I think, did you all get some stuff from Paul Rogers Harris too? And maybe some others did. He was a collector and an independent curator, and we bought a number of things from him. And you know, he was very nice. What?
You got there first.
We did get there first. Yeah, we probably did get there first. I think we probably told you all about it, as a matter of fact. So sorry. Yeah, after we took what we wanted, we didn't take everything. We just took a few things that we wanted. So and we didn't take. I mean, we paid for them, right? You know, it wasn't like we stole them. I mean, we think we gave them.
Well, wasn't one of the things though? Wasn't he part of the Texas Printmakers?
He was.
Basically, the women in the Printmakers Guild renamed themselves in '52 to Texas Printmakers, and so he was one of the few men let in the very last. But I did note that I found it very ironic that once they let the men in, they dissolved.
That's true. That's right. They let the men in like the early '60s, and by '65 they were gone or so,
Yeah,
right?
within 2 years.
Within 2 years they were gone. So you know, they let the men in, and it all goes to hell. I'm going to step out of the way so you all can come and see some of these things here, and then I probably will go to the opposite wall afterwards. So while I'm making my way over to the opposite wall, come get close and see some of the Corrine Spellman's work. She was a fabulous artist, and I think very underrated, and a wonderful, wonderful printmaker, particularly. I wanted to, and Kathy you did such a wonderful job hanging so many of the animals together, and this is one of our focuses. And I wanted to just talk about a few of the animals. So first, I think I'll talk about Otis Dozier, whose bolo I'm wearing. Many of you know Otis Dozier, who was a very influential early Texas artist, particularly a printmaker, but as a painter as well. He worked with Boardman Robinson up in Colorado Springs in circa 1940 or so, and he was there during the war. I don't know how he got out of the war. A lot of these people didn't serve in the war. On that wall is a work by Delmar Pachel, who taught at what's now UTA. He did serve in the war, and he was killed in the Battle of the Philippines to recapture the Philippines in '44. So his work is pretty rare. He died, he was 32 or 33 when he died. Dozier loved animals. And I just think you see a wonderful sense of humor in these jackrabbits, these giant jackrabbits, but there's a real love for the jackrabbits, and there's a real love for this land that is pretty bleak and pretty sketchy. And he came back to jackrabbits again and again and again. I could point out my bolo, this is a wild turkey, but he liked turkeys too. But jackrabbits, he painted jackrabbits. He did a series right before he died, as some of you know. He did a series of large lithographs of animals, and he did a jackrabbit again. So this was something that he liked and meant a lot to him. I want to point out a couple of other things. Let me point out this work by Revo Bassett, Dallas artist. This is a lithograph October. This is from a lot of these, not all of them were in the printmaker circuits, but this was in the printmaker circuit, this was in the printmaker circuit, that was in the printmaker circuit, 1, 2, 3. Revo Bassett, as many of you know, was a Dallas artist, very successful, and one of the things that he specialized in was painting ducks because he sold it to the wealthy Dallas businessmen who liked to hunt. And so he would have paintings, he'd do lithographs. And we have October, we also have 11 o'clock flight, which was in the year before or the year after. And what do I call them, Judy?
Ducks flying right and ducks flying
Ducks
left.
flying right, the other one's the ducks flying left. It's the same scene, the ducks are just flying left. So ducks flying right, ducks flying left. Now, as opposed to Merritt Maze, who many of you know, who was a wonderful regionalist, largely self-taught, I think, largely self-trained, and he had he was a wonderful draftsman, but he had a more naive kind of slight, I wouldn't call it primitive, but a slightly more naive style. Had a great sense of humor. This is called Home on the Range. He had a Guggenheim Fellowship in 1946, and this is his Guggenheim print. This is the print that he produced for the Guggenheim, and this has everything in it but the kitchen sink. I mean, this has, look, it's got tumbleweeds, it's got little bunny rabbits, it's got your buffalo here, it's got these ducks, and I want you to see these ducks and compare them to the ducks over in Revo Bassett because I'm sure he must have been a hunter. And Judy, what do you say about these ducks?
Those ducks don't look like they could stay airborne.
They don't look like they can stay
fat.
airborne. They're so fat. my gosh. They're taking off. This is so beautiful. These are big fat ducks that look like they're about ready to drop out of the sky. So maybe this is really the hunter's dream. You know, these are slow-moving ducks you may not even have to shoot. The other thing that I want to say here, and I love these two things. Kathy, thank you again for hanging these two things together. Emily Rutland, who I think is well known, but really too little known, I think. She was a wonderful printmaker. I don't think did she support herself with art, Bill? I think she just, did she? But I mean, she wasn't a teacher or on a faculty or anything like that. She did it, and I guess she sold her works. Vicki Cummins, you probably know certainly better than I do. Do you think she was able to make a living doing this, or this is just?
She lived on a farm.
She lived on a farm.
She didn't spend much.
Right. A farm or a ranch. And so this is a scene that she would have seen. This is called Morning. It's also sometimes alternate title is Cattle Waking Up in the Morning. And you can see she didn't censor this. You can see, well, you can just see the product, the cattle waking up in the morning there. And as opposed, now this is Bill Elliott. And Bill Elliott exhibited a couple of times, just I think 2 years maybe with the Lone Star printmakers. And he was, I think, primarily a commercial artist in Dallas. He happened to live across the street from us, and we didn't even know it was when we were first married, and we'd never heard of the guy, and we never got a chance to meet him. But this one's called Young Bulls, and I don't know if he's got a sense of humor. I don't think they're fighting, but they look like they're a lot friendlier. I'm just not sure what's going on here. But I will say, for Emily Rutland, if Thomas Hart Benton did cattle, I think this is it. I think this is so regional. It's so wonderful. It has some of the same motion and same kind of feel that Benton had. So I like that one an awful lot. What else did I say? This is Vera Wise, and I'll just put in a plug for her because she's I think really very little known. Taught at what's now UTEP. University of Texas at El Paso. She was head of the art department there, and she painted and she did prints, but you just don't see her work come up. We have 2 of her prints, and I just never see her work come up. This is called Troopers at Rest, and I think these horses are just beautifully done. Very, very nicely rendered. It's a windy day, so their manes are blowing and their tails are blowing, and I love that attention to detail. And I guess this looks like a circus wagon or a gypsy wagon or something like that maybe they've been pulling, and now they are getting a chance to rest and recuperate. If we have time, and again, please stop me if you have questions. If we have another maybe 2 minutes, I want to move over to this far wall because I want to talk about. Well, I'd like to do that wall too. We're not going to have time to do everything. I'm sorry about that. Let me move over to this wall on the left, please, and I'll show you, I'll point out a couple of things here. As I said, we like to collect the prints and the drawings, and we actually have a trifecta here. We don't have it here because that ogre, Bill Reaves, said that space was limited, so we have the drawing and the print, and we have the painting for this as well. And the painting is really a wonderful painting, but the drawing and the print are very nice too. So we didn't have room to hang the painting. So someday you'll have to come to our house and see the painting in situ. But it is fun to compare those as well. The drawing and the print are pretty close. The painting is the same scene. But there are some differences that you can tell in the painting. Obviously, it's in color, and the mountains are slightly different. But Edmund Kinziger, who was head of the art department in the 40s and 50s at Baylor, was a European refugee. Came over, I guess, in the first wave, probably early 30s when the Nazis took over in Germany. He was very much influenced by Picasso and by the Cubists, and you can see that even though he has a regional subject matter, he also. You can just see little hints of Cubism here, and if many of you have seen his other work, and some of them are very Cubist, as you probably know. So I like that one. This is Jerry Bywater's Election Day at Balmorhea, and this is the one that we decided to go because I think this shows Bywater's sense of humor rather than Terlingua, Mexican Graveyard, Terlingua Graveyard, which is much more somber. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece, but it's much more somber. This is funny. This is the 1938 election between, it was mainly between Ernest Thompson and Pappy O'Daniel were the two main contenders. There may have even been a runoff between the two of them, and you can see this guy's marking them up, and these cowboys are just walking here on the main street in Balmorhea out there in West Texas. Some of you may have been out there, been swimming in the pool out there, the big pool at the state park out there. And these guys are just walking down the main street, and they're stopping, they're looking at this, and some of them are going to have a Coca-Cola, and there's just all sorts of fun things going on, And here's the pool hall, right? If you can't pay, don't play. Just all these things that Bywater's did, like I think Oilfield Girls, where he has the 666 down there. He just was always had a little reference. You could spend a lot of time studying this one. So. I don't know. There are others. There are other sets of prints and drawings over there. There's a set of the drawing and the print by Ed Beard and Old John. Here's one of our still lifes. Here is the Loren Mosley skull and powder horn, and he did a painting of this as well. I think someone. Does Claude Albritton have that one?
No. Mark Keever does, and it was in our
Keever does.
That was in our earlier still life show.
It was in the still life show. Keever does. Okay. All right. So that's that. It's a small group of Texas art collectors, and we all tend to know each other, and sometimes we even know where things are. So Bill knows where everything. Bill and Linda know where everything is. I just know where some things are. I guess the very, very last thing I just want to point out Mary Doyle, who also taught at SMU, I believe, and she was a wonderful printmaker, and she was influenced by Cubism and mid-century modernism, and We have several of her prints, and they're very, the one from 1955 looks very cubist, and this just looks, just the colors and the layout look very mid-century modern, and we like that a lot. This is El Solitario out in the Big Bend area, the Solitary Way. She also did some other work out there. A lot of these women, the women particularly, but the men too, went out to the Trans-Pecos and oh gosh, Everett Spruce did so much out in the Big Bend area. And Alexander Hogue, but others as well. A lot of the women went out there, and some of the women went to Provincetown in the summers, and you see what they. Edith Bresack, who also taught, was on the faculty at Texas, what's now Texas Women's University in Denton, Texas Women's University in Denton. This is something that she produced, obviously, from the work she did in Provincetown. A lot of them went to Provincetown, and we heard that the then president in the 40s. Whoever was president of Texas Women's University, we understand he told the women, maybe you told us this, and he told his art teachers, he said, I don't want to see you in Denton in the summertime, right? Maybe you're the one who said this later, Vicki, one of you all said this. I don't want to see you, go out and paint somewhere else. And a lot of them went to Maine or went to Provincetown, Massachusetts, and you have works. Somewhere is the work. That's End of Summer in Monhegan. That's Maine, and that's by Lorne David from Beaumont, I believe, is where she was from. So they got out and they did those things. I don't know. You're tired of hearing me talk. Any questions before we end? I wish I could spend another hour with you all here. You may not wish you could spend an hour with me, but
I think I just want to say on behalf of everybody, and I'll certainly let Kathy, have her say on this, but I just want to thank both you and Judy for, one, what you've done in terms of assembling this incredible collection. And as you said, this is only a sample. This is only a small sampling of the kind of effort that they put into this and the kind of the kind of connoisseurship that I think that they brought to this. And so thank you very much, and your willingness to share that with students here at A&M, with faculty here at A&M. We're very, very grateful, and want to thank you for that. Now, this is recorded. There is a fabulous catalog with Linda design, I can tell you, which we want to make available. There's two great essays in there. One by Sue Canterbury, whom you've already met, who is there at one of our wonderful assets for Texas art there at the Dallas Museum of Art, and also Francine Carraro, who could not be here with us today, but they're two really excellent presentations. So what we're going to do, I just want to thank you guys again for this. We have had an argument about this, and you guys can add to this, but to our way of thinking, this particular exhibition of Texas prints is probably the most significant exhibition that's been really put together on Texas printmaking, probably in the last 30 years. Now, again, there's been some other, I think, really fine exhibitions, but in terms of the extent of this, and particularly focusing on these two printmaking groups at the same time, I think this really represents something of a historic contribution that you guys have made. So we're grateful for that. We wanted people to understand the significance of it. Now, the last thing I want to say is that Judy and Stephen are doing this tonight, and again, this all will go up on the website at some point. But Chris will be here on April 28th. The second half of this show is the Chris Beer Show on behalf of Chris will be here, and we invite you all back on April 28th, Thursday, April 28th, for Chris's presentation, which is going to be equally informative. The Now's work, which fills out this whole exhibition on paper, there's probably not as many, but I think what you're going to see is the backstory and the particular quality of each of the pieces are there going to tell really integral stories. So together, I think it's been a great exhibition. So we want to, again, thank you both. And we have a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Bill and Linda. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you all so much for giving us this opportunity. Thank you all so much for giving us this opportunity. We're grateful.